Some people don't lose relationships because they don't care. They lose them because they care too much. They replay conversations in their mind. They reread messages. They analyze tone, punctuation, timing, even silence. A simple text that says, okay, becomes a psychological puzzle. Does it mean they're annoyed? Did I say something wrong? Are they losing interest? Should I respond differently? Should I apologize? Should I ask what's wrong? The mind begins searching for hidden meaning. And the more it searches, the more possibilities it creates. Possibilities that often never existed in the first place. And slowly, the relationship begins collapsing. Not because of what actually happened, but because of what someone times thought times might be happening. This is the quiet paradox of overthinking in relationships. The deeper someone analyzes emotions, the harder relationships often become. To understand why this happens, we need to look at how the human brain reacts to uncertainty, because the brain hates not knowing. Uncertainty feels uncomfortable. And when the brain encounters emotional uncertainty, it immediately tries to solve the problem. Imagine someone you care about suddenly becoming a little distant. Maybe they reply slower. Maybe their tone feels slightly different. Maybe they seem distracted. To most people, this might feel slightly uncomfortable. But to someone who overthinks, this small signal becomes the start of a mental investigation. The mind starts asking questions. Did I say something wrong? Are they losing interest? Did something change? Did I miss a signal earlier? What did they mean when they said that yesterday? And soon, the brain begins connecting dots that may not actually be connected, because the brain prefers a wrong explanation over having no explanation at all. Psychologists call this the times analysis trap. Asterisk. When emotions are unclear, the mind begins analyzing endlessly. But relationships are not logical puzzles. They are emotional systems, and emotional systems are unpredictable. Even the same person can behave differently on different days. Someone might be tired, stressed, distracted. But when an overthinking mind tries to interpret every signal, normal emotional fluctuations begin to look like hidden problems. And the deeper someone analyzes, the more complex the situation appears. This is where the second psychological mechanism begins: cognitive distortion. The brain doesn't just analyze information, it also fills in missing information. Imagine someone taking longer than usual to respond to a message. The reality might be simple. Maybe they're working, driving, sleeping, talking to someone else, but the overthinking mind doesn't stop at neutral explanations. It begins imagining scenarios. Maybe they're ignoring me. Maybe they're losing interest. Maybe they're talking to someone else. Maybe they're slowly pulling away. These imagined possibilities trigger emotional reactions, even though none of them have actually happened. And this is where things become dangerous. Because emotions react to imagined threats almost the same way they react to real ones. The body begins producing anxiety. The mind becomes hyper-alert. Small signals suddenly feel extremely important. Every word becomes evidence. Every pause becomes suspicious. Every silence becomes meaningful. But here's the strange part. The more someone tries to understand the relationship through analysis, the more confused they often become. Because analysis multiplies interpretations. Instead of one possible meaning, there are suddenly 10, then 20, then 50, and the mind keeps cycling through them, trying to predict what might happen next. But emotional prediction rarely works. Humans are simply too complex. And this constant analysis begins triggering the third mechanism, emotional amplification. The brain is designed to amplify uncertainty. When something feels unpredictable, the brain increases emotional sensitivity. This was originally a survival mechanism. Thousands of years ago, uncertainty in the environment could mean danger. But in modern relationships, this ancient mechanism creates a strange problem. Emotional uncertainty triggers the same alarm system. If someone's feelings seem unclear, the brain treats the situation as unstable. And once the brain enters this heightened state, small signals suddenly feel enormous. A delayed message, a shorter response, a missed call. All of these signals begin triggering emotional reactions, not because they are serious problems, but because the brain is already searching for danger, and the more attention someone gives to these signals, the bigger they begin to feel. Soon, the relationship stops being about connection. It becomes about interpretation. Instead of enjoying time together, someone begins constantly monitoring the relationship, monitoring tone, monitoring mood, monitoring signals, monitoring change. And ironically, this constant emotional monitoring slowly drains the relationship itself. Because relationships rely on emotional safety, and overanalysis quietly replaces safety with pressure. Imagine being around someone who constantly tries to interpret everything you say. Someone who asks, "What did you mean by that? Why did you say it like that? Are you upset with me? Did something change?" At first, this might seem like emotional awareness, but over time, it begins to feel like interrogation. The relationship starts feeling heavy. Every conversation becomes emotionally loaded. And this is where the fourth mechanism begins, the self-fulfilling cycle. Overthinking often starts from fear. Fear of losing the connection. Fear of misunderstanding. Fear of emotional distance. Fear of rejection. But when someone constantly analyzes the relationship, that fear begins shaping their behavior. They may seek reassurance more often. They may question emotional signals. They may become more sensitive to small changes. And unintentionally, this behavior can create pressure on the other person. Because constant reassurance can feel exhausting. Constant emotional analysis can feel overwhelming. So the other person may begin pulling away slightly, not because they stopped caring, but because the emotional environment feels intense. And when they pull away, the overthinking mind sees this as confirmation. See, something times is times wrong, which increases the analysis even more, which increases the anxiety, which increases the pressure. And slowly, the cycle feeds itself. Fear creates analysis. Analysis creates tension. Tension creates distance. Distance creates more fear, until eventually, the relationship begins collapsing under emotional weight, not because the connection was weak, but because the mind tried too hard to control something that cannot be controlled. And this leads to one of the most difficult cognitive reversals about relationships. Understanding people deeply does not always improve relationships. Sometimes, it complicates them. Many people believe emotional intelligence means analyzing everything carefully, understanding every signal, interpreting every reaction, decoding every behavior. But healthy relationships rarely operate through constant interpretation. They operate through trust. Trust means allowing uncertainty to exist. It means accepting that not every signal has hidden meaning. Not every silence is rejection. Not every mood shift is about the relationship. Sometimes people are simply human. They are tired, distracted, bosu, or dealing with things unrelated to the relationship. But the overthinking mind struggles with this ambiguity, because ambiguity feels unstable, and the brain wants certainty. Yet here is the paradox. The more certainty someone tries to create in a relationship, the more fragile the relationship often becomes. Because connection cannot be forced through analysis. Connection grows through emotional space. Space for imperfection. Space for misunderstanding. Space for silence. Space for unpredictability. And often, the healthiest relationships are not the ones where everything is analyzed perfectly. They are the ones where not everything needs to be explained, where pauses are comfortable, where silence is not threatening, where small misunderstandings don't trigger panic, because the foundation of the relationship is not constant interpretation. It is emotional safety, and emotional safety comes from a simple belief that the connection is strong enough to survive uncertainty. Ironically, people who think the deepest about relationships often struggle the most inside them, not because they lack empathy, not because they lack awareness, but because their mind refuses to stop searching for meaning. Sometimes the healthiest response to uncertainty is not analysis. It is calm. It is patience. It is trust. Because love is not a puzzle meant to be solved. It is an experience meant to be lived. And when someone finally learns to step out of the endless loop of analysis, something surprising happens. Relationships often become lighter. Conversations become easier. Emotions become clearer. And connection begins to grow naturally again. Not because every signal was perfectly understood, but because the mind finally stopped trying to control the unpredictable nature of human emotion. If this perspective resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on your own experiences. Have you ever noticed how overthinking can quietly shape relationships? Sometimes, simply becoming aware of this pattern is the first step toward breaking it. And if you found these insights valuable, consider subscribing for more explorations into psychology, human behavior, and the hidden patterns that shape our relationships.